You ever feel like your whole life happened without you? Like one day you come home and the people you trusted have already buried you, on paper, in memory, like you never existed? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when someone tries to erase you and you choose to fight back. They said I was dead. They forged the papers, burned the truth. But they forgot one thing. I don't vanish quietly. If you're ready to hear how I uncovered the lies, survived the silence, and turned their scheme into something stronger than revenge, stay with me. And if stories like this matter to you, real stories about ordinary people with anything but ordinary lives, then subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and drop a comment. There's more to come. And trust me, this is just the beginning. My name is Kayla Rivers. I'm 28 years old. I was born in a small town just outside of Savannah, Georgia, where the summers are too hot. The tea is always sweet, and people say things behind your back with a smile on their face. I left this place when I was barely 18, joined the army before the ink on my high school diploma had dried. Some folks said I was running away. Maybe I was. I just knew there was nothing here for me anymore. Not after my father slammed the front door behind him and didn't come back. Not after my sister stopped looking at me like I was family. Not after I became invisible inside my own house. The army gave me structure, purpose. Out there, in the desert, among the dust and diesel and the constant hum of helicopters, I found something like peace. Funny, right? War zones can feel more honest than the place you called home. I came back 6 weeks ago, quietly. No parades, no welcome banners. I didn't tell anyone. I got off the bus in the early morning, duffel slung over my shoulder, boots worn thin. The air smelled like pine and fried grease, like it always did. But the streets? They felt different, like something had shifted while I was gone, like the ground remembered I'd left it. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I sat in the back booth of McAllister's diner, watching the sun crawl up the windows like it didn't want to face the day. I stirred a cup of black coffee until it went cold. People passed by outside, faces I remembered, and others I didn't. None of them saw me. Maybe they'd forgotten I existed. Maybe they'd been taught to. It wasn't until I opened the local paper that I saw his name. David Rivers. My father. Dead. He'd passed 2 days before I returned. No one called me. No one sent a letter. No one asked if I wanted to come say goodbye. I stared at the obituary like it was a bad joke, a copy and paste cutout of a man who'd made it his mission to remind me I was a disappointment. Decorated businessman, devoted father, beloved husband. No mention of the child who left in a uniform. I showed up at the house anyway. The old place looked the same, just lonelier. The shutters sagged, like they'd given up trying. Weeds crept up the porch steps like hands reaching for something long gone. The front door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled like lemons and wood polish, like someone had tried too hard to pretend things were normal. My sister was in the kitchen, pouring wine like it was already night. Lauren, blonde hair tied up tight, manicured nails, eyes that never stopped judging. She looked at me like I was a ghost, not in shock, more like annoyance. "Well," she said, setting the glass down without offering me one. "Look who crawled out of the desert." I didn't answer, just stood there in my boots and silence. "You're a little late," she added, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. "Dad's already been buried." I blinked. "You didn't think to tell me?" Her smile was thin, artificial. "We thought you were off the grid. Figured the military would have let you know. Or maybe not. It's not like you were exactly in touch." There was no grief in her tone. Just that same cold syrup she used in high school when she told Mom I'd broken the vase. And I hadn't. But I took the blame anyway. I always did. She walked over to the side table and opened a sleek black folder. You're here for the will, I assume. Not out of sudden familial affection? I stared at the folder in her hands. Legal documents, typed in the kind of sterile font that never held emotion. She flipped through them, page by page, then stopped. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes? They flickered. Funny thing, she said, holding up a single page. Dad left you everything. I blinked. What? She tilted her head like a dog hearing a strange sound. House, land, bank accounts, his company shares, all of it. I waited for the punchline, but none came. Just the sound of her wine glass setting down on the table like a gavel. You're lying, she shrugged. Don't take my word for it, it's right here. She handed me the page. I read it once, then again. His signature was there. Notarized, witnessed. Dated just 3 months ago. The terms were clear. Everything went to me. I don't understand, I whispered. Neither did we, she said. But don't worry. Then she smiled. And before I could react, she reached for the lighter on the kitchen counter, flicked it once, and set the paper on fire right in front of me. I lunged, but it was too late. Flames ate through my father's signature like it never existed. She dropped the blackened ash into the sink and turned on the faucet. There, she said. Problem solved. My chest tightened. My hands shook. You can't. But I can. She leaned in close, her perfume sharp and suffocating. Because legally, you're dead, Kayla. I stared at her. She stepped back and tossed something onto the kitchen table. A death certificate. With my name on it. Kayla Rivers. Declared deceased. Killed in action. Official stamp. Date. 2 years ago. My hands went numb. We had to make some hard decisions, she said, sipping her wine. Dad didn't want to accept it at first, but it was better this way. Cleaner. Simpler. Your absence finally made sense. I couldn't breathe. Lauren walked away like nothing happened. I stood there, the fake death certificate in one hand, the scent of burned paper still in my nose. I didn't know how they'd done it, how far the lie had gone, or why they needed me gone so badly. But I knew one thing. Someone in this town wanted me erased, and they almost got away with it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my truck outside a motel off Route 10, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me to something real. I watched headlights slide across the wet pavement, listened to the cicadas scream under the humidity, and tried to wrap my head around what had just happened. Declared dead. By my own family. I'd dodged bullets, buried friends in sand, and kept breathing through things most people couldn't imagine. But nothing prepared me for this. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd erased me. And yet, there was one thought that wouldn't let go. Something didn't add up. My father, David Rivers, the man who once told me I'd wasted my education on a uniform, the man who flinched every time I wore camo to the dinner table. Why would he, of all people, leave me everything? He hated my choices. Or maybe he just didn't understand them. But hatred doesn't usually come with signatures on wills. I needed answers. And not the kind Lauren would spoon-feed me between lies. At dawn, I drove to the one place that still felt like it might know the truth. My grandmother's house. It sat half-sunk at the edge of Hollow Creek, wrapped in vines and memory. The mailbox still read M. Rivers in faded cursive. I hadn't been there in years. Not since the army. Not since she died. But I remembered what she said to me once, under her breath, while the rest of the family argued in the other room. If they ever shut the door on you, Kayla, look under the old maple. I left you something that matters. I thought it was metaphor, a kind of emotional keepsake. But now, it felt like a breadcrumb, The maple still stood behind the house, towering, twisted roots like reaching fingers. I dropped to my knees near its base and began to dig. The soil was soft, the kind that remembered storms. After a few minutes, my fingers hit something solid. A tin box. Rusted, cold. Inside, a folded envelope. A flash drive. A deed, notarized and signed. A handwritten note in my grandmother's looping script. I sat against the tree and read every word under the rising sun. If you're reading this, Kayla, then they tried to shut you out. I knew this would come. I saw it in their eyes every time you left a room. I couldn't stop them, but I could prepare. Your grandfather taught me to play a longer game. The documents enclosed prove you're the legal heir. The video on the drive is for your eyes only. If they've lied, if they've faked anything, this will matter. And if it's too much to fight, don't. Just disappear, baby. But if you do fight, don't stop until they're the ones afraid to look in a mirror. My throat burned as I finished reading. Grandma always said things other people were afraid to. Now I understood why. She didn't trust them either. I drove straight to the only person I thought might help. Someone who didn't owe my family anything. Miles Harper. A local attorney about my age who I remembered from high school. Back then, he was the quiet kid with too many books and not enough friends. I hadn't seen him in years, but people said he had a reputation now. Not flashy, not corporate, but smart. His office was above a pawn shop. No receptionist, no suit. Just stacks of folders and a worn desk with a crack in the corner. He looked up when I walked in, took a second to recognize me. Kayla? I nodded. Yeah, still alive. He blinked. I thought you were dead? I said, pulling the fake certificate from my bag and slapping it onto his desk. So did they. He picked it up, eyebrows raised, read it twice, then looked at me. This is insane. I need help, Miles. He leaned back in his chair. You always go straight to the nuclear option? I didn't smile. Okay, he said, more serious. What do you have? I laid it out. The deed, the letter, the flash drive. I didn't show him the video yet. Something about it felt too personal, like it might change everything. Miles scanned the paperwork, his eyes narrowing. This is good, really good. Your grandmother was smart. This deed predates the probate filing from your father's estate, which means if his final will matches it. It did, I cut in. Lauren showed me the copy. Then she burned it. His expression froze. She burned it? In front of you? I nodded, and told me to my face I was legally dead. He was silent for a moment. Then, I've handled some shady cases before, but this is a new kind of low. We sat in silence for a beat, the weight of it all settling between us. I'll file an injunction, he said finally. We'll request the official probate documents, challenge the death certificate, subpoena the notary if we have to. But Kayla, he looked up. If they were willing to go this far, they're not going to play nice. I'm not asking them to. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it up. I haven't watched this yet, I said. But whatever's on here, it's from the only person in that family who ever gave a damn about me. He nodded slowly. Let's plug it in. The cursor blinked as the file loaded. A single video, titled simply, For Her. I clicked play. The screen faded from black to the inside of a dim living room. My grandmother sat on a worn chair wrapped in a shawl, eyes bright with something between sadness and steel. She looked straight into the camera. Kayla, if you're watching this, it means they tried to erase you. But baby, you were never the one who should have been afraid. Then she paused and smiled. I've been keeping secrets, not just for you, for him too. About what your father did. About why he changed. And I think it's time you knew everything. The screen went dark, and my heart dropped into silence. The screen stayed black for a few seconds after the video ended, long enough for me to realize that wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Miles sat across from me, silent, thoughtful. I could see the gears turning behind his calm expression, his lawyer's mind already peeling apart every word my grandmother had spoken. But I wasn't there yet. I was still in that room with her, still hearing her voice, still trying to breathe around the weight of what she'd said. He changed. She was keeping secrets. Not just mine. His. What did he do? I said aloud, not even realizing the words had left me. Miles looked up. We'll find out. But that flash drive, it could be huge, especially if there's more. I clicked open the directory. There were 3 other files. One was labeled 1987 Transfer. Another, Rivers and Mason Cummises, Legal Settlement, Confidential. The last simply read, Lauren. I hovered the cursor over the last one but didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I turned to Miles. You said something earlier, that you could challenge the death certificate? He nodded. It won't be simple, but yeah, we'll have to file a request with the county clerk. There's a process. If we can prove it was filed fraudulently, the entire estate distribution gets called into question. It'll force a re-examination of the will. But it's gone, I said. Lauren burned it. He leaned forward. Wills get filed with probate court, Kayla. If the original was submitted legally, there's a copy in the county records. If she burned the only version, that's suspicious in itself. Either way, it works in your favor. I stared at the documents on the table. My fingers grazed the handwritten deed from Grandma Mary. It still felt surreal, touching paper that had been buried for years, paper that had survived fire, lies, and legal death. She said he changed. I murmured again. Miles tapped the file labeled 1987 Transfer. This might tell us why. I clicked it open. It was a scan of an old land ownership form signed in shaky pen, dated October 15th, 1987. It showed a large property, almost 300 acres, being quietly transferred from someone named Harlan Beckett to David Rivers for a price of $1. What the hell? Miles whispered. $1? That was the legal placeholder for a gifted transfer. Land like that should have been worth hundreds of thousands. He scrolled through the pages. There's no banknote, no lender, no mortgage trail. He glanced at me. This was done off record. Someone gave him this land. Who was Harlan Beckett? I asked. Miles typed quickly into his laptop. Hang on. After a few minutes of searching, he turned the screen toward me. A black and white photo appeared. A newspaper clipping. Harlan Beckett, former sheriff of Chatham County, dies at 72. I scanned the article. No mention of my father. No connection drawn. But my stomach turned. I don't get it, I said. Why would a sheriff hand over land to my dad for $1? Miles didn't answer. He just clicked open the second file. Rivers and Mason Coman, Legal Settlement, Confidential. It was a scanned legal agreement, 2 pages. Settlement date, 1995. Plaintiff, Marie Delaney. Defendant, Rivers and Mason Co. Nature of dispute, wrongful death, coercion, and obstruction of justice. My breath caught. Wrongful death? I skimmed the text. Marie Delaney had filed a claim that her brother, a contractor named Jake Delaney, had died under unexplained circumstances on a job site managed by Rivers and Mason. According to her, Jake had discovered something illegal and intended to go public. Days later, he fell from a scaffold. The case never went to trial. The company settled privately for $175,000, and the documents were sealed. My father's signature was on the last page, and so was the sheriff's. Oh my God, I whispered. Miles looked grim. The sheriff hands your dad land in 87. Then 8 years later, they're both named in a wrongful death cover-up, and they bury it. This was never about me, I said. It was about them, about what they were hiding. All of this, Lauren, the fake death certificate, the will, it's a smokescreen. They didn't want me to inherit because it risked dragging all of this back into the light. Miles nodded slowly. And maybe your dad knew that. Maybe. Giving you everything in the will was his way of coming clean. I sat back, heart pounding. And now he's dead. Miles didn't say it. He didn't have to. The timing was too neat. I closed the laptop. My hands were trembling again, but this time it wasn't grief or betrayal. It was clarity. Someone had built an empire on silence, and I was cracking it open. Where do we start? I asked. Miles looked at me carefully. We file the injunction. We go after the probate records, and we find someone who was there. Anyone who remembers Beckett, or Delaney, or what happened on that site. I nodded. Good. He hesitated. Kayla, this gets worse before it gets better. You're taking on your own blood. They stopped being my family when they buried me alive. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then I stood. I'm going back to the house, I said. Miles's brow furrowed. Why? There's something else I need to find. Something Grandma didn't bury. He stood too. Want me to come with you? No. I grabbed the drive. If I don't show up in 24 hours, open the Lauren file. You'll know what to do. I didn't wait for his answer. As I stepped out into the humid Georgia heat, one thought looped in my head. My grandmother knew what they'd done, and she knew they'd do it again. The house looked smaller in the dark. The porch light had burned out, or maybe someone had deliberately unscrewed it. The windows were dark, like eyes that didn't blink. I parked across the street and killed the engine, letting the silence settle in like fog. I hadn't told Miles the whole truth. Yes, I was going back to the house to search for more, but part of me had also come for something less rational. Instinct. Something in my gut whispered that Lauren wasn't finished. She wouldn't have burned that will, staged a legal death, and handed me a forged certificate unless she was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I waited, watching the front door like it might move on its own. At 11:17 p.m., it did. A figure slipped out. Light, fast, cautious, blonde hair pulled back in a bun. Lauren. She didn't turn on any lights. She moved toward her car like she didn't want to be seen, carrying something under her arm. A laptop case? I ducked low as her car rolled past me and disappeared down the street. I gave it 60 seconds, heart pounding, then stepped out and crossed the road. The front door was locked now, but Grandma once taught me how to open it with a credit card when I was 16 and locked myself out during a summer storm. Some things don't fade. The lock gave way with a quiet click. Inside, the house was colder than I remembered. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Even the walls felt like they'd been stripped of something. I moved slowly, flashlight off. My boots barely touched the floor. Every room had been cleaned, scrubbed too hard, as if someone had been trying to erase not just dust, but memory. But people never clean everything. I started in the office. My father's desk was immaculate, too immaculate. The drawers were empty except for one old pen and a coaster that still smelled faintly of bourbon. No papers, no files, no receipts. But I remembered something from years ago. A fight between Dad and Lauren, voices muffled behind a closed door. The safe stays where it is, he had said. It's not just money in there. At the time, I thought he meant guns or cash. Now I wasn't so sure. I scanned the room slowly, eyes catching on the floor molding. On the wall behind the bookshelf. There. A faint smudge on the hardwood where the shelf had been dragged. I braced myself and pulled. Dust and silence. Then metal. A small safe, bolted into the floor. I dropped to my knees and examined the dial. Old school combo lock. 3 numbers. No keypad. No reset button. I sat back, cursing softly. Then something clicked in my head. Grandma's birthday. October 3rd, 1938. I tried. 10:03:38. Nothing. Then Dad's. February 12th, 1966. Still nothing. One more shot. The day he left. I remembered it because he'd slammed the door so hard it cracked the kitchen tile. He walked out on my mother the day after my high school graduation, June 5th, 2014. I entered. 06:05:14. There was a heavy clunk. The door creaked open. Inside, there was no cash, no guns, no jewelry, just a single manila folder yellowed with time and an audio cassette. I pulled them out carefully, my fingers tingling. The folder was labeled Beckett, Chai, Delaney, duplicates. Inside were copies of legal papers I hadn't seen before. One was a statement from a man named Earl Simmons, a contractor who had worked under Jake Delaney in the 90s. It wasn't notarized, but it was dated. His testimony described faulty wiring, pressure to lie on inspection reports, and a warning Delaney had issued a week before he died. They think they can bury it, but I made copies. If anything happens to me, it's on them. Below that, scribbled in my father's handwriting, I tried to warn him. He didn't listen, and Beckett wasn't bluffing. I stared at the sentence for a long time. My heart sank with the realization Dad didn't just know, he participated, or at the very least, stood by and watched it happen. The man who used to call me a disgrace had been part of a silent cover-up that destroyed lives, and now, he was dead too. But what killed him? I reached for the tape. It had no label, just black plastic and that soft rattle when shaken. I stood, dusted off a portable stereo from the office shelf, and slid the cassette inside. A click, then static, then his voice. If you're hearing this, I'm either too late or finally did the right thing. My breath caught. I kept a lot from you, Kayla. From all of you. But you never looked away. Even when I did. He sounded older. Worn. There was a rattle in his lungs. Beckett gave me the land to buy my silence. I told myself it was justice. Jake was reckless, I thought. Brought it on himself. But I knew. I knew they'd pushed him. That scaffolding didn't fall by accident. A pause. Breathing. They think I'm dying of natural causes. They're wrong. It's in my drink. Has been for weeks. I feel it every morning. The pills don't help anymore. They're tightening the noose slowly so I don't see it coming. I staggered backward. If Lauren's behind it, if she went to the lengths I think she did, don't try to reason with her. She's not the child you remember. I stopped the tape. My fingers were trembling too hard. I heard something then. Not on the tape. Behind me. A soft creak. The hallway. I turned, heart leaping. A figure stood in the doorway. Lauren. I didn't know how long she'd been there, but her eyes said enough. She looked at the tape player, then at my hand on the folder, then back at me. Put that down, Kayla, she said softly, but her voice wasn't soft. It was the sound of ice cracking on a frozen lake. Quiet, but deadly. I didn't move. Lauren stood in the doorway like she belonged to the house more than the walls did. Her hand rested on the frame, not casually, but with calculated poise, like she was reminding me. You may be standing here, but this place answers to me. Her eyes flicked once to the stereo, the soft whir of the cassette still turning, then back to me. I asked you to put it down. Her tone hadn't changed. Calm, almost maternal. But there was something feral behind it now, something barely leashed. I could say the same to you, I replied. You've been playing God with paperwork, death certificates, Dad's will, and now I find out he didn't just die. He was poisoned? Her mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something colder. I didn't poison him, she said. Then who did? She took a step inside the office. Her heels were silent on the wood floor, but her presence thundered. You know what his last words were to me? She said. He told me I was weak, that he should have left everything to you. She smiled now, but it didn't reach her eyes. I spent my whole life proving myself to that man. Staying, managing his empire while you were off in sandstorms, playing hero. And the moment he gets sick, suddenly you're the daughter of redemption, the soldier, the martyr, the inheritor. He changed, I said quietly. He knew what he'd done. No, she snapped. He remembered what you made him feel guilty about. You always had that power, Kayla. You walk into a room and people second-guess their choices, but you never had to stay and live with them. My grip tightened on the folder. I didn't come back to take anything from you, I said. But you lied. You burned evidence. You declared me dead. Because you were, she hissed. You were dead to this family, the second you left Mom in that hospital bed without a word. I was deployed, I said through clenched teeth. I called. She never answered. Her eyes flared. She cried for you. Every night. She begged me to keep this family together while you were gone. And when Dad started hiding in whiskey bottles and filing papers behind our backs, I was the one who fixed it. You didn't fix anything, I said. You rewrote it. I stepped back, folder still in hand. Lauren saw the movement. I'm taking this, I said, and I'm giving it to the court. There's enough here to bury your claim, reopen the estate, and launch a criminal investigation into Dad's death. You really thought no one would ask questions when you forged a death certificate? I didn't forge it. I froze. She said it too quickly, too cleanly. You had help? I asked. Her silence was confirmation. I narrowed my eyes. Who else, Lauren? Who helped you fake my death? Who's still helping you? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled something out. Small, black, and deadly. A gun. Not aimed. Not yet. Just visible. Enough to change the energy in the room. My stomach twisted. Jesus, Lauren. It's not what you think. Really. Because it really looks like you're about to add another body to the list. She exhaled, slow and deliberate. I just wanted to talk. Yeah? Next time, try a cup of coffee. Her fingers didn't tighten on the grip, but they didn't relax either. I'm not going to kill you, Kayla. That's never been the plan. But I am going to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. I didn't speak. She stepped closer. The room was too small for all the history between us. You weren't the only one Dad betrayed, she said. You think you're the daughter of truth, but you didn't see it. The women, the payoffs, the threats, the people he ruined. And when Grandma found out, she gave you a way out. Not me. You. Like you were special. Her voice cracked, just slightly. She told me once, if anything ever happened, she'd make sure you were protected. Lauren didn't answer. Her eyes were glassy now, unreadable, but she stepped aside, just 2 inches. Enough. I passed her without turning my back, made it to the door, and heard her voice behind me, quiet, almost detached. You still don't know what he did to her. I stopped. To who? She didn't answer. When I turned back, she was gone. The front door swung open, and a black SUV was idling at the curb, engine low. Another figure stepped out, a man I didn't recognize. Broad shoulders, sharp suit, no expression. I didn't wait. I bolted out the side door, through the backyard, over the fence, and into the trees. Heart pounding, mind screaming. Lauren hadn't just built this lie alone. She'd had help. And now, whoever they were, They knew I was alive. I didn't stop running until the woods swallowed me whole. The pine needles tore at my arms. The night air cut through my clothes. Every snap of a twig behind me sounded like footsteps, like breath, like the past clawing for a final grip. But I didn't stop. Not for fear, not even for survival. I ran because this time I was the one with the truth, and they couldn't take it from me. By sunrise, I was in Miles's office again, mud on my boots, dirt on my skin. But I had the folder, the tape, the entire rotted skeleton of a family legacy that had hidden behind fake smiles and manicured graves. He looked up from his desk, eyes widening. Jesus, Kayla, what happened? I dropped everything onto his desk. Everything's here, the fake death, the settlement, the safe, the confession. He stood, flipping through the pages, scanning like his life depended on it. And maybe it did. Because this wasn't just about property anymore. It was about murder, conspiracy, legacy. They'll try to spin it, he muttered. They'll say your dad was senile, that you edited the tape, that your grandmother's deed was forged. They can try, I said, but they'll be doing it in front of a judge. He looked up at me. You're ready for this? No, I said, but I'm doing it anyway. That afternoon, we filed the injunction. A day later, the courthouse buzzed with whispers. 3 names circulated through the halls like ghosts. Lauren Rivers, David Rivers, Harlan Beckett. The media came next. Someone leaked the tape. It hit local news, then national. The headline read, "Decorated businessman leaves empire to dead daughter. Family fraud uncovered after mysterious death." The sheriff's old connections? Gone, retired, some dead, others unwilling to burn with him. Lauren disappeared for 3 days, then turned herself in. Her lawyer called it a tragic misunderstanding, but the DA saw it differently. Fraud, perjury, evidence tampering, accessory to murder, pending investigation. They tried to bury me, but the soil they used was filled with bones. The estate was frozen, then unfrozen. The will, once thought destroyed, was recovered from court archives. My name, Kayla Rivers, was printed on every page. They couldn't deny me anymore. I stood in the empty shell of my father's house weeks later. The light had changed. The shadows weren't so long. The dust didn't seem so heavy. But the ghosts were still there. Not the kind that rattle chains. The kind that sit at dinner tables, smiling like nothing's wrong. The kind that say, "I'm proud of you," only after they're gone. The kind that linger in mirrors long after you've walked away. I found Grandma's old necklace in the back of her dresser, a tiny silver feather, light, worn smooth from worry. I put it on. I didn't keep the house. I sold it, all of it, every nail, every secret in the walls, every window that once stared out at lies. And with the money, I started something new. The Hollow Creek Foundation, a nonprofit for female veterans returning to civilian life, offering legal aid, housing assistance, trauma counseling, the things no one offered me when I came back. I bought a small building downtown, bright windows, real light. There's a quote etched into the entryway glass from one of the women we helped our first week open. "They tried to erase you, but you wrote yourself back in." People still stop me in grocery stores now. They whisper, they stare. Some say I'm brave. Others say I was lucky. But most just don't know what to say at all. And that's okay, because I know who I am. My name is Kayla Rivers. I came back from war twice. Once from overseas. Once from the kind that wears your last name. They tried to write my ending for me. But I'm still here. And the story's mine now. All of it. And that's how it happened. They tried to take everything. My name, my home, my past. They thought if they buried me deep enough, in lies, in paperwork, in silence. I'd never climb out. But life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sometimes the people closest to you turn out to be strangers. Sometimes the ones you love are the ones who hurt you most. But even when everything falls apart, you still get to choose who you are. You can let the darkness swallow you, or you can hold on to the part of yourself they couldn't touch. It's not about revenge. It's about dignity. It's about looking in the mirror and knowing you didn't let them turn you into something you're not. So if you've ever felt forgotten, betrayed, if your story hasn't been heard, know this: you're not alone, and your voice still matters. If this story moved you, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Here, we tell real stories. Stories about ordinary people who survived extraordinary pain, betrayal, and loss, and came out stronger on the other side. Thanks for watching. And remember, even in your quietest moment, you're still here.